Welcome to Skytech-Lens. Have you ever felt like the ground beneath your feet is shifting, politically, culturally? Here in the US, it feels like we're standing on two continents drifting apart. Beyond headlines about polarization, there's a deeper story: economic anxiety, rising costs, and a widening cultural divide. For many, the American dream feels distant, and they're searching for alternatives. Some are looking north. Today we'll explore 6 states where the idea of joining Canada is moving from fantasy to serious discussion, driven by history, economics, and grassroots movements. Stick with me as we uncover how this northward drift could reshape the map of North America. Our journey begins in Vermont, a state with independence in its DNA. Before joining the Union, Vermont spent 14 years as its own republic, a legacy that still shapes its identity. Vermont's progressive policies, universal health care, environmental protection, community focus, often align more with Canada than the rest of the US. The border with Quebec is less a barrier than a bridge. Vermonters and Quebecers cross for work, family, and business. Economically, Vermont and southern Quebec are deeply intertwined, functioning almost as a single region. This connection has fueled organized movements like the Second Vermont Republic, advocating for peaceful secession or even joining Canada. Supporters argue Vermont's small-scale and direct democracy are ill-served by a polarized, centralized federal system. The Canadian model, universal healthcare, environmental stewardship, and a calmer political climate, is an appealing alternative. Vermont's trade with Canada is vital, supporting thousands of jobs and billions in commerce. Culturally, the state feels like a blend of New England and Quebec with shared heritage and traditions. The idea of joining Canada is no longer fringe, it's a mainstream conversation as political tensions rise. For many, the question is simple: does Vermont's future lie with Washington or with its northern neighbor? The economic logic is hard to ignore. Many businesses depend on seamless access to Canadian markets. As the US grows more divided, Vermont's northward gaze is becoming more serious. The state's unique identity, history, and economic ties make the Canadian option more than just a thought experiment. For Vermont, the northward drift is about stability, shared values, and a future that feels possible. The conversation is growing louder, and the implications could be historic. Vermont's story is just the beginning of a larger trend. Let's see where the drift leads next. Next, we head to Maine, where the border with Canada is a daily reality. Maine's economy is tightly linked to Canada. Hydroelectric power from Quebec, robust trade, and the Port of Portland as a gateway for Canadian goods. The prosperity of Maine and its Canadian neighbors is deeply intertwined. Northern Maine is the heart of Acadian culture in the US, with families, language, and traditions crossing the border. For many, the international line feels artificial. Acadian identity blurs national boundaries. Maine's own history of breaking away from Massachusetts echoes today's conversations about self-determination. As US politics grow more polarized, Canada's consensus-driven system and social safety net look increasingly attractive. Access to Canadian healthcare is a real draw, especially in border communities. While there's no formal secession movement, the idea of closer ties or even joining Canada surfaces in local conversations and business partnerships. Mainers value pragmatism and cooperation, traits they see reflected in Canadian politics. The pull northward is a mix of economic reality, cultural kinship, and a desire for stability. For many in Maine, the Canadian flag feels closer to home than the stars and stripes. The northward drift here is subtle but persistent. It's about finding a better fit for Maine's unique identity and needs. The conversation is growing, especially as national divisions deepen. Maine's story is a powerful example of how borders can become bridges. The state's future may be more connected to Canada than ever before. Let's continue our journey west. Now, New Hampshire, the live, free, or die state. Its fierce independence fuels not just local control, but a growing skepticism of Washington. The Free State Project has brought liberty-minded people together, and talk of secession has reached the state legislature. While proposals haven't passed, the debate is real. Could New Hampshire go its own way? Northern New Hampshire shares deep ties with Quebec. Economically and culturally, the border is porous. For some, Canada's decentralized federation is appealing. Provinces hold more power than US states. The idea, could New Hampshire join Canada and keep its unique tax structure and local autonomy? It's not about embracing Canadian social programs, but about self-governance and practical partnership. The debate is forcing residents to ask, where does our allegiance truly lie? For New Hampshire, the pursuit of liberty is leading to unexpected possibilities. In the Midwest, Minnesota's northward gaze is more than symbolic. Sharing over 500 miles of border with Manitoba and Ontario, Minnesota's economy and culture are deeply linked to Canada. Canada is Minnesota's top export market. Supply chains and communities straddle the border. In places like International Falls and Fort Francis, the border is almost invisible. Residents cross daily for work, school, and shopping. The region's shared fur trading history predates both nations, creating a sense of unity. Politically, Minnesota's progressive tradition aligns with Canadian values: public education, environmental protection, and social safety nets. As U.S. polarization grows, Canada's consensus-driven system looks increasingly attractive. There's no formal secession movement, but the idea of joining Canada surfaces in grassroots conversations, especially when border restrictions disrupt daily life. The Northwest angle, accessible only through Canada, highlights the practical logic of closer ties. Minnesota's identity, a blend of Midwestern pragmatism and Scandinavian social consciousness, feels at home with its Canadian neighbors. The northward drift here is about shared values and practical realities. For many, looking north is about finding stability and a better fit. Minnesota's story shows how deep integration can make borders feel irrelevant. The conversation is only growing. In North Dakota, the connection to Canada is all about pragmatism. The state's economy is fully integrated with Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Farmers, oil, and energy sectors operate seamlessly across the border. For many, the market means the North American plains, not just the U.S. Healthcare is a prime example. North Dakotans often seek care in Canada for better prices and quality. This isn't political, it's practical. Culturally, rural North Dakota and Saskatchewan are nearly identical, with shared ancestry and values. When Washington's policies don't fit, North Dakotans look north for solutions. There's no loud secessionist movement, but the idea of formalizing cross-border ties is discussed in business circles. What if the border became even more seamless? What if a special economic zone was created? As the U.S. federal system grows more disconnected from prairie realities, the Canadian alternative looks less radical and more sensible. North Dakota's story is about efficiency and results. The border is already blurred by daily life. The question is whether political structures will catch up to economic and cultural realities. For North Dakota, the future may be about what simply works best. The northward drift here is quiet but powerful. Finally, Montana, Big Sky country, where all these themes converge. Montana borders 3 Canadian provinces, creating a vast integrated economic zone. Logging, ranching, energy and tourism flow seamlessly across the border. In many towns, Canadian dollars are accepted as readily as US dollars. The crown of the continent ecosystem is managed jointly with Alberta, symbolizing shared environmental values. Many Montanans feel more kinship with their Canadian neighbors than with distant federal authorities. Environmental stewardship, local control and distrust of centralized power are core values on both sides. The idea of a new North American power axis, spanning Montana, Alberta, and British Columbia, is gaining traction. It's not just about joining Canada, but about forming a resource-rich, environmentally conscious region with shared interests. Montana's political sentiment is complex, but the desire for self-determination is strong. The conversation is about who decides the future of Montana's resources and way of life. There's no mass movement yet, but the economic and cultural integration is undeniable. Montana's triple frontier makes it the keystone of this northward drift. This isn't just a series of isolated cases, it's a pattern. A new North American reality is emerging along the border. Montana's story shows how powerful these cross-border ties have become. The future may look very different than today's map. From Vermont to Montana, the story is clear. People feel disconnected from Washington and find more in common with Canada. This isn't about rejecting America, but searching for a better fit, economically, culturally, and politically. The northward drift is real, driven by shared values and practical needs. Could we be witnessing the start of a fundamental realignment of North America? What do you think? Could a U.S. state ever become a Canadian province? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Subscribe the channel for more updates.